Hi, my name is Tony.
And I'm Chris.
And we love pop culture. We often find ourselves discussing film, music, literature, and more, going down the rabbit hole of how everything is connected. We want to share those moments in pop culture that are seemingly unrelated, but connected by just a few links. Welcome to the Pop Culture Connection. Excellent. Welcome back to another episode of the Pop Culture Connection. This is Tony again here.
And Chris.
A lot been going on past couple weeks. Usually start out here talking about what's going on in pop culture. I had mentioned last week I just did a catch-up little mini recording and talked a lot about Norm Macdonald. We were just discussing him before we started, and it's still hitting hard.
Yeah, I guess I'm in denial still.
Yeah. Went down a rabbit hole of his guest appearances on different talk shows and never knew what was going to come out of his mouth at any time.
I don't think anybody did, or the hosts or producers of those shows.
There was an excellent him on The View. That's all you need to...
Is that when he did his kind of apology for whatever faux pas of the week it was?
Right, whatever perceived slight at the time. But he had a heart. He didn't want to set out to hurt anyone, or he didn't even want to do the roast of Bob Saget because he didn't want to talk badly about his friend even in that. And he didn't like the format.
Yeah, those roasts can be pretty brutal. Right.
So his take on it was, let's read jokes from the 40s with a complete straight face and see if the audience gets it or not.
Yeah, I think they did. I think just played by his own rules, and that's why we love him.
As a man we'll discuss in this episode might say, so it goes.
So it goes.
Which is all you can really say about anything. Did you watch the Emmys at all?
No. I've never watched an Emmys in my life.
I can't say that I've ever... the Oscars I used to be into, the Emmys, and with the shows that... the big winners were Ted Lasso, Hacks, and The Crown, which I know of, but I haven't watched any of them.
Yeah, I guess maybe it's not the best thing to say on this podcast here, but I'm not a huge TV person in terms of the classic network TV stuff. Unless it's from the 60s.
Right.
So I'm a little behind.
Yeah. And there's just a lot of content now. Every streaming service has its own stuff, and everything's coming out with their own new shows, so you can't even keep track of everything. And
right. I mean, even 20 years ago, there was a lot of content, and now that's just exacerbated tenfold.
Right. I know of Ted Lasso. I've heard very good things about Ted Lasso and Hacks. The Crown seems like one of those drama series that are wink material for Emmy committees.
My mom was really into it. She kept trying to get me to watch it, but she loves British period pieces.
Oh, yeah.
All you have to do is put on the crown jewels and speak with an accent, and she's on board with it. So
drier than Melba toast, but people love it.
Yeah.
One thing I did like was WandaVision won for Best Original Song for Agatha All Along, which was a very catchy tune.
Oh, I've not heard it. Is that the theme song?
No, an episode of WandaVision. They reveal who the main villain had been throughout the entire thing. She had
why don't we say that now?
A Munsters style theme to it. I already gave it away. If you don't already know, the song is called Agatha All Along, and there's a character that you're pretty sure who that is in the show. But the song actually itself went viral the next day, and the downloads of it were crazy.
So Emmys still have a bit of sway and pull when it comes to influencing things.
Oh, absolutely.
It seems as if the red carpet event before any of these things is larger than the actual accolades and recognition. So, and you know me and my fashion sense.
Well, I'm the same way. T-shirt. That's it. Just usually a T-shirt. Yep. Nothing else. No. So yeah, that's a big part of why I don't really get too into the award shows. There are other podcasts that will talk about those in depth. I love television. There's shows that I watch now. There's shows that I make time for, and even older shows that I'll go back and rewatch. Like you said, there's plenty of material from 60s through the 90s that
is now accessible.
Right, yeah, you can watch it, the full thing again, and just kind of binge all of that stuff.
I understand the impetus behind award shows, but at the same time, I don't understand it in terms of it seems like industry people congratulating industry people on the stuff that they're going to be doing anyway.
Well, yeah, because the Emmys will award Emmys to other awards shows for doing a show about giving awards. So
yeah, it all becomes very meta.
Yeah.
So a lot of that is just a lot of what we in the biz call circle jerking, and
which is a good show.
It's a great show,
and that was a good one. Season 3, I think, is where the circle really jerked the most.
So it's an excuse to have a party in the who's who, and I understand that, but it doesn't really draw me in much. None of the stuff I ever really like gets recognition.
That's true, yeah. I did see, I don't know if you saw Cassandra Peterson, a.k.a. Elvira, Mistress of the Dark.
I'd like to see her.
Well, she just this past week had come out and said that she'd been in a same-sex relationship for the past 20 years.
Oh, she came out.
Yeah.
She was in a coffin.
Probably still, yeah.
Well, good for her.
But the best thing I saw about that was someone had tweeted, "That's all well and good for her. I'm glad that she's comfortable, but how the hell did her partner not start every conversation with, 'I'm dating Elvira'?"
Maybe she did. And depending on who you're talking to.
No one. Yeah, right.
Uh-huh.
I wouldn't believe you if you told me.
Why should you?
Right. But I thought that was great. I know. She's starting, I believe they're kind of rebooting Elvira for a new series or something.
Her?
Another show. Her still being the character, yeah, bringing it back to do another kind of B movie, yeah.
Good for her.
Yeah. I don't think you can keep doing that bit. It just, as long as she's able to still do it, wants to still do it, it works.
As long as she's got the appropriate attire, I guess.
It was a big part of it.
Sure.
Of
a big part of it.
A couple big things there to be reminded of. And then speaking of something similar, I see some people are upset that they're doing a new Roger Rabbit series and Disney toned down Jessica Rabbit's sexuality. So there are people who are very upset about that.
Well, I guess those people probably had some intimate relationship with Jessica, and so any changing of that character is going to be seen as an affront to that relationship that they had.
It seems like whatever you do now,
yeah, there's no winning.
You can't.
You're damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Can't you do anything without, and even that.
Because if they remade it and kept it the same, they would have got flack from people as well. So,
right.
I mean, I thought the whole character was over the top for the sake of being a cartoon that's over the top.
Yes.
But
she was made to be a representation of the bombshell of that era and overtly sexual. That was the whole point. But
Well, I would say subtlety is lost on a lot of people these days, but overtness is also lost on a lot of people.
Yeah, which is weird when you think about it. That
Sure.
You kind of have to just like, okay, here's what it is now.
So I'm curious to know what the toned down version is.
Yeah, I saw that it's kind of like a film noir trench coat, almost a Carmen Sandiego type look, which they already have a character of. Her name's Carmen Sandiego.
Yes, well, they need to redo her.
Right.
She needs to be more flamboyant.
They're gonna make her more sexual.
Yeah, she's too low key.
And no more talk about geography.
Right, let's get that out of there.
Like, no one cared about that part.
Yeah. Doesn't turn me on at all. Well, it turns me on.
Well, yeah. And especially with Rockapella singing about it. So no matter what you do, people are going to be upset.
If it doesn't have Bob Hoskins in it, I don't know if I'm on board anyway.
It's a good point. And without Judge Doom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll just eventually dig everything up from the dead and until it dies the slow, painful death and find another corpse to beat.
So it goes. But yeah, that'll bring us to, what we'll talk about for this episode. We take two things that seem like they're not connected in any way, might have a couple small ideas or concepts in common, but find the through lines that connect them, the other moments of pop culture or film or music, books. And so today we wanted to talk about, two of our favorite people.
Yes.
Weird Al Yankovic and Kurt Vonnegut.
Yes. Big influences.
So I don't say it would be exaggerating at all, no matter how much I say you and I are Weird Al fans. Like, there's no cap on that. We are massive, massive fans of Weird Al Yankovic.
I was just listening today, and not just because we're doing this episode, but that's just a daily occurrence.
And now having kids and having played Weird Al for them, I hear them playing it, and I love it so much because I've enjoyed it since childhood. And I know we've talked about this before, just personally, but, we'll kind of share with the audience. I probably heard Weird Al first when Eat It came out. Mm-hmm. It was probably the first time I was made aware of who Weird Al was. And then he had a couple other videos playing on MTV that I know that I caught, but it wasn't until a friend of mine had some old tapes that I think his mom got at a garage sale, or that he was getting rid of
cassette tapes
of different full Weird Al albums, and I listened to them until that I wore them out, like everything back and front, just obsessed.
Yeah, he kind of... You don't have that type of comedic performance in the mainstream music scene today. Can you think of another example where... Eat It was a huge hit nationally.
Right.
And it got airplay. Can you think of a comedy song that received national airplay in the past 20 years?
No, I think it's everything is so done immediate now and on the internet that you can go and find, as soon as a song comes out, the next day there'll be 100 parody videos of it, but they might become viral in some way, but not anything because of...
Yeah, it's not structured the same as it used to be.
No, it's not. That was... He, cashed in right at the time, that came in right at the start of music videos and MTV, which was a big part of it, I think.
Al TV, another one of those music video kind of shows you watch on television. Al TV, the video music channel that makes everything else in life obsolete.
Yeah, and I remember seeing UHF, knowing who he was, but the video going along with his persona, and that just kind of got me
solidified.
Yeah, wanted me to dive a bit deeper into it.
Yeah. So I know, again, kind of going back a little bit, when I discovered him, kind of like learning where he came from, and then when I got older, discovering the Dr. Demento show, and actually had a tape my cousin had recorded of Dr. Demento from the 80s. It was my first exposure to that. And just how we wouldn't have Weird Al without, it was Dr. Demento that first gave him any kind of airplay back in the late 70s when he was just sending in these tapes he recorded.
The demos in the bathroom?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then they got at least, Dr. Demento show, pretty niche thing that some people listen to. But from that came the big explosion. As once he did a parody of Michael Jackson, that was it.
Even something like Dr. Demento, like you said, there are countless things on the internet that you can do, but to have a nationally syndicated radio program where your entire focus is bizarre and comedic music, just something that you're not going to find today.
No.
The way the radio is structured.
No, you're lucky if it's a college station at 1-2 hours a week on like a Thursday night. That's someone's thing that they do.
Well, that's why I still love college radio.
I love
here.
it. Yeah,
it's one of the best things this region, the Cleveland region, has to offer is a rich and vibrant college radio scene. So you never know what you're going to tune into.
There's some cool stuff out there, and people still playing some unique cuts and trying to get people, expose people to these newer old things.
These new old things.
New old things.
Yeah, I always want to stay away from these kids these days sort of paradigm, because we're not really that old in the grand scheme of things, but things have changed pretty drastically just in the past decade or two in terms of that. You have access to everything that you want, but
you want...
But what do you want?
Yeah, and again, having younger kids, they have full access to any music, any movie they want, and when it comes to movies, they'll watch 24 hours of YouTube of some guy screaming while playing Minecraft, and that's what they want to watch. There's so much. You don't even know the world that you haven't even scratched the surface of yet. And I'm itching for them to jump into that.
It's very daunting. Maybe that's why we say we want to be free and make our own choices, and on some level we do, but at the same time, if there's too many choices to be made, can't somebody just do it for us and kind of curate and put together something that we can access rather than just now the algorithm does it for you. We all bow down to the algorithm instead of another human being.
Right. And there's too many interpersonal choices in that. For algorithm works, for you might like the same exact thing, but it's not gonna really say, but also you might like this. I think there is an app that's out that kind of analyzes what you listen to and watch and will recommend actual movies and music and podcasts based on your preferences instead of just the same YouTube videos. YouTube wants you to keep coming back to YouTube.
Yeah.
But there are there's so much more out there.
There is.
So it must be difficult. We had it easier. We had cassette tapes. The first CD I ever bought with my own money was Weird Al's Dare to Be Stupid. Mm-hmm. We got a CD player for Christmas one year, and Even though I had it on tape, I wanted a CD quality sound.
Was that $15? That's a lot of money back in the 90s.
I think it was $15, $20 bucks probably.
Jeez.
At Camelot Music.
Wow.
But I was so happy with it. And that obviously continued on, but Weird Al has continued to be popular.
Yeah, he's still there. He's still putting out stuff that, once the album with Tacky and Word Crimes.
Mandatory Fun was the latest one.
That was the number one album for a week.
Which, that again, other than him, who's going to do a comedy album, that's massive in this kind of thing. And then he did a video and song to go with the 2020 presidential debate, which went viral and kind of showed you how we're all doomed.
Yeah.
No matter what.
In a fun way.
In the only way he can. A little bit, I think, subversive. He has that slight, we're all going to die and nothing really matters kind of.
But he's not mean or mad about it. Kind of like Norm Macdonald.
Yeah.
Somebody whose comedy could cut and be, on one hand, so seemingly offensive, but when you look at it and dissect it, it's not. It's just like all good comedy. It's a truth that you're pushing forward and say, "Look at this truth, isn't it wacky?"
And some people are able to look at it, and that maybe something else that speaks up, about him. You don't really see a lot of people up in arms about. He walks the line. I think not like ripping sinks off of walls and getting drunk and that kind of walking the line. But he kind of straddles it enough that he's not going overboard in any way. But if you listen, he's really saying some good stuff.
It's hard to do.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
To toe that line and keep people entertained and say funny stuff that is mildly subversive, but at the same time not making anybody offended or... maybe if he had come out now, things would be different. People would say, girls just want to have lunch. That's offensive.
It's fat shaming.
Yeah, fat shaming. Mm-hmm.
Or, yeah, that's true. I'm sure someone can find a way to be offended, or...
It's pretty easy.
Yeah. It is. I think that's it's easy to be offended. You can really be offended by anything. And... yeah, is it worth saying something about?
Most of it, no.
Right.
But I'm constantly offended by stuff, but it's not anything that's going to ruffle any feathers. My stuff is more ideological and stuff nobody else really cares about, so right. It doesn't have a target to it.
Target's offensive.
Target is offensive. Minnesota.
But I think, for me, as far as comedic influences go, people that I've loved my entire life, Weird Al has been you and I have gotten to meet him.
Yes. Which
was a very excellent night, live show. And
we got to greet him more.
It was a greet, yes. It was a quick, here you go. But
I whispered in his ear.
Yeah.
And
I love you.
He seemed put off by it.
Well, he whispered in my ear that he was put off by it. It was a good time. But he had some, ups and downs, I think, in his career, times that he's kind of went away a little bit and came back. But there was a period in summer of 1989 that a movie came out. And something that you mentioned a little bit earlier. This movie came out, again, summer of 1989, which also had Batman, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, Ghostbusters 2, and License to Kill. And they decided, let's release Weird Al's UHF alongside these other films and see how it does.
And it was the top-ranking film amongst all of them, right?
I think it still, to this day, is made For my money, again, at that age, it came out I remember it coming out around my birthday in that summer, and I begged my parents to take me to go see it. And I loved every second of that movie.
It's a good time.
There's just one place to go for all your spatula needs.
Spatula City! Spatula City!
A giant warehouse of spatulas for every occasion.
And something that, again, I've shared. If you haven't had a chance to see UHF, I do highly recommend it. It's a very strange, almost airplane, Kentucky Fried Movie type feel, almost like a series of sketches and held together by a loose plot, but absolutely bizarre character of George Newman. It's like a Walter Mitty-esque type of guy who dreams of doing something bigger in his life. His uncle wins a local TV UHF station in the card game, which we don't even have UHF anymore.
Maybe you have to make a disclaimer there of what is that? Basically, it's a local access, or if you grew up, if you're over the age of 38, you probably remember local access cable, and it's basically just a studio somewhere out in the middle of nowhere that would broadcast a signal that didn't get very far, only the surrounding neighborhoods, and there was really no oversight as to what could go on those channels.
If you had the money in a lot of the stations, they just had anyone who wanted to come on in the studio. If you want to talk about something, if you paid, it was like an open mic night. It was before internet, and you had some extra money and you had a crazy thought or song or idea that you wanted to get out of your head, this was the chance to do it.
Yeah, it was a telethon-esque vibe. During the day, it was a lot of Christian stuff, a lot of fundraiser stuff, maybe some used car dealership spots, and then after it got dark, as the saying goes, the freaks come out at night.
And that's when all the fun started.
And these people that just wanted to be on TV and didn't really have a plan, so to speak. They just had a bunch of weird friends who were willing to work for free. I mean, Wayne's World is
that's probably the best.
It's the best known example
of what that was like. And just something that's not, again, with YouTube and anyone being able to record themselves and put it out there, it's not really a thing anymore, but there was a look and a feel to a public access station production that just made it creepier. You did mention kind of a telethon feel, which does happen in the movie. Having to raise money to save the station from the evil antagonist who was going to shut them down.
Which they all won, by the way.
Yes.
In real life, the evil empire closed them all down.
Yeah. So they didn't have that plucky janitor character played by Michael Richards. A great cast that was in, Fran Drescher, besides Weird Al, early Michael Richards role. We'll talk about Seinfeld probably in a few episodes coming up, but even prior to that, there was Stanley Spadowski, and what a bizarre character he was. But there is actually a telethon within the movie itself, and in one of the more bizarre scenes, I have to play a sound clip of it because I can't even. This is not a visual podcast, but it's just two guys with tank tops hunched over with large chins and going woo 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 for 30 seconds.
We also had a whole lot more of the Kipper kids, but tragically, that too wound up on the cutting room floor.
Pitter patter patter, pitter patter patter, here comes the rain. Let it pitter patter down for the rain. We'll bend your umbrella and go on a washing. And the umbrella's too mean today.
And there they go.
Yep.
So I think people, when they see that movie, there are a lot of weird things that happen, but that's one of the parts that people go, what the hell am I watching?
Yeah.
Right
He
now.
earns his namesake there.
Yeah.
Putting that in.
And it wasn't just let's be weird, just to be weird. Those are two actual performance artists named Harry and Harry Kipper, otherwise known as the Kipper Kids. So didn't know much about them. I know that they've had some appearances in other TV shows, it looks like. Some interesting facts about them. Real names are Martin, Sebastian von Hazelberg, and Brian Routh. So they were just two artists, performance artists, and ended up becoming this duo of the Kipper Kids getting together in the 70s and afterwards. Apparently, Martin Sebastian von Hazelberg is married to Bette Midler.
Really?
Right there that could have been an episode of the show right there.
Wow.
Very interesting connection.
So
Who was on Seinfeld?
one of the Kipper Kids.
One of the guys going, "Ooh." Anyway, Jeff is married to.
Is that what turned her on? I was like, I gotta seek this man out and marry him.
Find him for me. It was like when Jamie Lee Curtis first saw Christopher Guest. Mm-hmm. It was like the same kind of thing. But yeah, a very, very odd thing that I didn't know. Apparently, they were also on an episode of Moonlighting, which was known for having more surreal episodes, more conceptual episodes. Moonlighting was pretty ahead of its time for when it came out, and there was an episode where the Kipper Kids were in a dream sequence playing gravediggers.
Oh, it's a good role for them.
I think so. Yeah, I think that works.
Have you seen Moonlighting?
Moonlighting was on when I was very young. My parents loved it.
My parents watched it. It's like,
but I had to go to bed, and it was almost like a taboo. You're not allowed to see this. There's too much sexual tension between Sybil Shepherd and Bruce Willis.
Yeah, I just remember, all I remember of it as a kid was Bruce Willis being like worked up all the time, and not even in the sexual way. Maybe I didn't understand it at the time, but I remember he was just constantly like,
yeah, his early comedic Bruce Willis.
Yeah,
before action star.
That's all I remember of the show.
And exasperated Sybil Shepherd. I remember the exasperated Sybil Shepherd, like, oh, you. Yeah. But that's about all. But I've caught clips of it now, here afterwards, and it did end up in syndication before. So I know I've caught it some episodes, but I've never watched. That's one I've never watched all the way through. I do know, when looking back on it, was very cutting edge especially for network television.
Yeah, it's one I got to go back to. Like you said, there's access to everything now, and all these shows my parents watched in the 80s and 90s that were just over my head, or like you said, it's bedtime. It's 9:30. This show's coming on, and I didn't want to watch the show. I just wanted to stay up, but I feigned
I didn't
interest.
care what the show was. Yeah. I just wanted to be up later than Mr. Belvedere. Mm-hmm. Not later than Mr. Belvedere, because he wouldn't stay up that late. He would write in his diary.
He was an early to bed, early to rise kind of guy.
Yeah, because he needed to keep the family running, because they didn't know what they were doing.
No, he was the glue. But yeah, I would just be like, I want to stay up and watch 30-something.
Right. That was another one that I could not have given a shit about, but because it was on later than my bedtime, I can be awake. I love this show.
Yeah, I understand what they're talking about. I
can identify with. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I didn't know much of that, so it was interesting to see. I think that the Kipper Kids, of all people, were that. They also did a short song you can hear that clip in the Addams Family film. They do a little song called Playmates. That's over like a montage of Pugsley and Winslow.
Yeah, I had that soundtrack.
Yeah, so that's them. Which, when you think about it, like, okay, that makes sense. It's goofy.
Playmate, come on and play with me, and bring your dolly free. Climb up my apple tree, look down my rain barrel, slide down my cellar door, and bring me jolly friend. Playmate, I cannot play with you, my dolly has the flu. Ain't got no rain barrel, ain't got no cellar door, but we'll be jolly friend.
And then the only other thing I saw that they were in is a little movie from 1982, pretty kind of obscure from what I know, called Forbidden Zone. So is that one that you've seen?
No.
All right. It's not one that I haven't. I ended up finding a copy of it. I only found out about Forbidden Zone maybe within the past 10, 12 years. Just kind of like going down rabbit holes of stuff like this, and especially looking when kind of getting into avant-garde, art house, weird films. It's one that's kind of brought up on a lot of lists of strange movies.
It sounds like a late night Skinamax movie with lots of steamy saxophone solos.
It's more of kind of reminiscent of a John Waters. If John Waters made a late night Skinamax zone, and then got Danny Elfman to be in it. It was written, actually produced, and directed by Richard Elfman, Danny Elfman's brother, but Danny Elfman is in it and helped be part of the music for that. It was shot in the late 70s, but didn't premiere until 82, I think. But the movie itself is set in around an alternate universe accessed through a door in the house of the family called the Hercules family. And it's really based on the stage performances of the theater troupe that was the Mystic Knights of Oingo Boingo. Danny Elfman, Richard Elfman, their original theater troupe and musical production of the Mystic Knights.
I mean, that idea has just been done to death.
I think everyone, at some point in their life, when you turn 18, you get a tattoo, and then you form
from
an avant-garde troupe
yeah,
that you then eventually turn into a movie.
Just keep saying to yourself, it's only a movie. It's only a movie. It's only a movie that will have you living in the sixth dimension, moving in the wrong direction. A new fantasy, musical, comedy. The Forbidden Zone.
So here's one that I think we need to watch. I would love to check it out.
This is in the sort of fantasy realm.
It's something.
It's an adult movie or
no? It's probably more geared towards adult. Again, it's just very strange stream of consciousness almost to it, and more centered around being like an art house type.
Okay.
Just this production is what we're putting on. You don't have to worry about much else.
I've always found it fascinating that all the stuff I've seen, from highbrow stuff to schlock, that for everything we've seen, there's a dozen things that we have not seen.
That's true.
And
when you start looking into it, and then there are whole subgenres of movies. Even if you go into exploitation films, that there's 100. They were grindhouse films were being cranked out, and maybe one or two were a gem, and others kind of forgotten the time. But they might have had something to them that was the first time something was done, or the first appearance of an actor that ended up being big, or some connection between
technique or sound design.
Yeah, there's a lot out there, and That's why I appreciated doing like the horror movie marathons when we would go to that Drexel Theater in Columbus, and they would show some of those old trailers. I would never have found out about Werewolves on Wheels without.
You would have missed out.
If you want to see a good werewolf biker film, you want to see the only werewolf biker film.
Quintessential.
But yeah, I think that Forbidden Zone is very much one of those kind of forgotten. At the time, obviously not a big budget. No one huge was in it. I can't remember the actor's name from Fantasy Island, the little person. I think he might have been one of the bigger stars in it, so that should tell you something. But really it was, again, to showcase Mystic Knights of Oingo Boingo, which, if you know, later on, ended up Danny Elfman, before he was doing film scores prominently. There was new wave band in the 80s, Oingo Boingo. Can you call them new wave? What would you classify them as?
They were one of those bands that they were their own thing. Okay. A lot of times you hear a band name and it's just a moniker. It's just like, okay, well, this has no relationship or affinity for the music. But if someone were to ask you to describe the sound of the band, I think Oingo Boingo would be an apt description.
That's a good point. You can just say that instead of trying to describe each song.
Yeah.
Because you can go by album or by song and just, if you just said Oingo Boingo, I think that. And I remember that being one of the bands too, like in 80s sitcoms, that like the teenager of the family liked, and the parents were always like, what kind of name is that? It was always the joke, like, Oingo Boingo.
It was just too weird.
Yeah, and that peaked. I was like, who are these people? Mm-hmm. Why do parents question their name?
That makes me want to look into them and find out what they're about.
It only peaked. You made monsters of us.
Yep.
Great band. They are unlike anything else. I can be in a certain mood for them. They had a couple, I think, maybe their biggest hits were Dead Man's Party. Weird Science, which was written for the movie of the same name.
Back when you had to write the song for the movie.
We were talking about that recently,
Mm-hmm.
But it's still a great song. Little Girls is up there. It's probably one of their better known songs. But they appeared on the soundtracks too, especially in that time. They're on soundtracks for Fast Times at Ridgemont High, 16 Candles, of course, Weird Science, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, Teen Wolf 2.
Yeah, it's almost as if that family had an in the movie industry.
I think Danny Elfman knew what he was doing. He was very smart about marketing himself and using that as a stepping stone for
his transition into
going a lot, which works for him.
It does.
And made him very rich and made almost every Tim Burton movie.
I enjoy a good Danny Elfman score. And not a bad vocalist as Jack Skellington.
It's very good. Still a very good singer. I know that this Halloween they're doing a live production, full orchestra with him performing in the role, showing the movie at the same time, which would be incredible to see.
Wow.
It's still beautiful film, and just him writing all of that music, and it's so iconic right now.
Talented guy.
Absolutely.
And I love the anecdote, the story of where Tim Burton approached him asking him to do the score for Pee-wee's Big Adventure, and he was like, I don't do movie scores. I'm in a band. And Burton's just like, just try it. Just do it.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay, I'll give it a shot. And then the rest is history. And now he's probably, outside of John Williams and maybe Jerry Goldsmith,
Hans
Zimmer.
Yeah.
Can you name other famous composers of movie music.
Yeah, and more recognizable. And that the feel, I mean, when you think about his body of work and look back at themes for Batman and Tales from the Crypt and Beetlejuice, so many of these films, these dark, tough, he's got that feeling to it. He started out doing kind of lighter stuff when Tim Burton was first starting to direct. And I know that one of the first things he scored was also Back to School, 1986, Rodney Dangerfield.
Yeah.
So that is one that I kind of remember seeing in theaters when it came out.
It was at the height of Rodney mania.
It was. Yeah, my dad at least was a huge, like, we're seeing it. I don't care what content it is, taking the family to see this.
It was a solid premise. A 60-year-old man goes back to college.
Thornton Mellon. And he's got a kid in college, and he wants to prove that he never graduated, cheated his way through school. But before Billy Madison, there was Thornton Mellon.
Mm-hmm.
Had a lot of money, he could get away with it, and all sorts of shenanigans ensued.
Yeah, this was much like Ladybugs, which would follow, just a vehicle to have Rodney do his thing.
Do his thing, right. But you look at the cast, too, of Keith Gordon, Sally Kellerman, Ned Beatty, Sam Kinison as a history teacher in one of probably the more funnier scenes of the movie. Young Robert Downey Jr., babyface Robert Downey before Iron Man, and William Zabka at his height of I'm a blonde bully who's a better sportsman than you.
Yeah, which every movie from the 80s like that needs.
Yeah, you get that kind of, we get this guy, William Zabka, we're going to make it.
The consummate asshole.
And he was good at it.
He was good at it. I hear he's a really nice guy in real life.
He is supposed to be, yes. I mean, well, Cobra Kai has proved that. But, yeah, perfect vehicle for a Rodney Dangerfield.
It seems like a movie that the studios, you understand what's trending and what's hot. I mean, studios and executives were the arbiters of this. That's where we are today. But just kind of like, hey, this guy Dangerfield is he's really on right now. Let's make a movie. Like, it was kind of one of those movies written over a weekend, I think. And not to say it's a bad movie.
No, but it was a quick premise from a hat. What if you're a guy that's, it was like if you were on Saturday Night Live as the host and someone was pitching a sketch. You're 60-something, you're rich, and you need to go back to college with your kid. Plus, you're Rodney Dangerfield. Yeah. What would happen?
Arguably the best one-liner comedian of all time.
And he made it work. It's just some great, again, Sam Kinison, some great cameos. Also, during a party, who's the band playing at the party, but Oingo Boingo, doing Dead Man's Party. Mm-hmm. Great little bit there. So in addition to Danny Elfman doing that score from the movie, he was like you said, I got an in here. You need a band for this party scene. You know who I know a couple guys.
Another big 80s and early 90s trope was the band at the party that's sort of this semi-famous mid-level band that just also happened to be playing at this frat house.
Right. They just showed up at this party. Well, probably Thornton Mellon paid them off a little bit. Mm-hmm. So you end up with some interesting cameos, but I think the most shocking, the one that comes out of left field, is when his character has to write a paper for his literature course about Kurt Vonnegut. So he pays Kurt Vonnegut to write the paper for him.
Hi, I'm Kurt Vonnegut. I'm looking for Thornton Mellon.
What do you think? Someone else wrote this?
Look, all I know is that you didn't, and that's what disappoints me. Tell you something else. Whoever did write it doesn't know the first thing about Kurt Vonnegut.
And another thing, Vonnegut, I'm going to stop payment on a check. What's that? Fuck me. Hey, Kurt, you read lips? Fuck you. Next time I'll call Robert Ludlum.
And Kurt Vonnegut shows up, not an actor, playing him. Just 10 seconds. Hi, I'm Kurt Vonnegut, and that's it. One of the best cameos. Because it's so unexpected. I don't know of him doing anything else like that. I don't know of any other movie that he's in, other than maybe like a, of talking in a documentary or something.
He seems like a guy that just, they asked me.
I think that was it. I think I was trying to find information about it, but there doesn't seem to be a lot. But it does sound like it was a matter of, hey, we're doing this. Do you want to do it? Yeah, sure. Yeah, nothing else going on.
Yeah,
right
maybe the script writer was a fan, just wanted to throw him in there in the movie, and then they thought, like, hey, let's see what he's doing.
It's a perfect, and I love the fact that the literature teacher ended up hating the paper and saying that you obviously know nothing about Kurt Vonnegut, which brings it up. Was she just judging it as thinking that Thornton wrote it, so anything that was written was going to be bad? Or do you think that Vonnegut purposely wrote a shitty paper because he didn't agree with being used to write a paper about himself?
Are we doing a deep dive into back to school, into this one
This
scene?
is what you come prepared for.
Now, if I had to guess, I would say that the professor prejudged this old man. But, Vonnegut's he's crafty, and he seemed like somebody who would just sabotage it on purpose. So I don't know.
That's what I'm thinking. Is he didn't end up getting paid for it, and maybe he knew.
Right.
So it was like, I'm just gonna do this my way. Another person, like, I'm gonna do it the way I'm gonna do it, and that's who we ended up with. He's sorely missed. I can't even imagine what his viewpoint on the world today would be.
Well, you hear the term ahead of his time or ahead of their time thrown around a lot, but I think that is an apt description of him. I came to notice his works via my 9th grade English teacher. Had us all read Cat's Cradle.
Yes.
And you know how kids feel about required reading. So most people just groaned and mumbled. I probably did myself. But then I actually read it. Half the people just pretend to read it.
Right.
And after that, I was a convert.
Yes.
It was eye-opening. And to think that he wrote that book in 1963, it just seems so modern in terms of tone and content.
Oh, yeah. So much of... other than...
I mean, it is modern.
Other than some references to specific technologies that would have been around at that time, if you updated a couple of the references, so, even other stuff he wrote feels the same way. It's just such a unique look at everything. And I had the same experience. Cat's Cradle was required reading 1 year. I think it was summer reading. And then we also recorded reading with Slaughterhouse-5. And again, both of them, other people were griping about it, and I was all in. It's like, I want to talk about it. Who is this guy? I want to find out more. Where did he come from?
Indiana.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, that's all I needed to know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, his whole attitude, I guess, really, I'm going to say jibes with mine, but then it raises that question of, was I somebody who was open to this and so I received it, or was I influential and that influenced me to be, he sort of persuaded me towards that direction.
Right.
The chicken or the egg thing.
Right. And that anyone who is able to do that, at least make you think about it. And you don't always find that in authors, even on his time. So I feel lucky that, schools still make them kind of required reading, I guess, at some point.
Really? There's bad words in those books.
In the mid-'60s, I guess, in Republic, Missouri, decided to withdraw Slaughterhouse-5 from its libraries. So the Kurt Vonnegut Memorial Library offered a free copy to the students, which is a very him thing to do. Yeah. Which I love that. That should not deprive, no matter what the language is. They're high school students. They're able to handle it.
Yeah.
Especially something like that. Maybe we wouldn't be in some shitty places with where things go with his favorite subjects of war and religion.
Mental health.
It's
another ahead of his time. He was discussing mental health issues decades ago. And his mother had committed suicide by overdose. His son had a mental breakdown. He obviously struggled greatly with his own issues of depression and attempted suicides. But he wasn't somebody who kept that bottled up. He was more than willing to talk about it and say this is part of the human condition.
PTSD, before we even coined the term PTSD.
It was called battle fatigue then.
Right. And that's...
Or post-operational exhaustion, I think was the...
That was, kind of like passed off, and he was so good at kind of exploring that and kind of putting you right there with that of this is what can happen if we're not careful, if we don't, give people an outlet, if we allow them to continue down these paths.
Yeah.
Which, again, he passed away, was one of those times that, he might say so it goes, but it definitely lost some of that. There's no one else really like him. That
he lived a long life, despite his attempts to end it early.
Right.
And, despite his lifestyle of being pretty much a lifelong drinker and heavy smoker, to live into your 80s. Most people would think that lifestyle is a death sentence, but he, like many things,
made it work.
Bucked the trend.
Right. And I think there's certain genetics there, and there might be just like I'm not going to let, if I'm going to die, it's going to be by my own doing somehow. So, yeah, it was good. I did, in preparation, just kind of went back, because it's been a while since I've read any Vonnegut. I think it was probably a few years. So I went back and got the audiobook, at least for Slaughterhouse 5, and listened to it. Just immediately wanted to pop it in again as soon as it ended and just kind of explore a little bit more too.
Yeah, I went on a quest to, just due to the Cat's Cradle required reading. It was right when the series of covers of the Dial Press books came out, which is just the very stylized V and then the black bars across the front. And so I went on a hunt to find his entire collection in that cover style of paperback. And I'm only missing one book. So if you ever see Sirens of Titan in the trade paperback size in that cover style, get it for me.
Let's hear anyone. If you're listening out there, Sirens of Titan in the trade paperback series, Kurt Vonnegut.
The Dial
if you
Press
have it,
covers from the mid-'90s.
Let us know. We'll make a deal.
They're hard to find.
Someone must have. Someone's got to have it. Someone's got to have it. And we have tens of listeners right now. So, but that was our third connection, our third episode.
Taking us to Weird Al. Through to Kurt Vonnegut, some of our favorite people, some of our biggest influences that made us the people we are today, for better or worse.
And that's why I like doing this, because it's, well, you and I might mention Kurt Vonnegut and Weird Al in the same sentence. Just about what you do this weekend. Oh, I read this and listened to this. It's, two things that a lot of people know and love and are influential to them, but not might piece together. But, you have Oingo Boingo and Danny Elfman and the Kipper Kids to
get you there.
To get you there. So another area to explore, because they're not just the meat on that sandwich.
Yeah, you never know how these things are connected.
If you are enjoying the show, if you're listening, please reach out. Let us know what you think. We have our Gmail account at ThePCCCast@gmail.com. Our Twitter is ThePCCCast. The Pop Culture Connection on Instagram and on Facebook. So, leave a review, leave a comment, send us an email, tell us what you think. If you're from somewhere outside of our region here in Northeast Ohio, tell us where you're from and how you heard about us and what you like or don't like. And if you have any suggestions that you want to do or a challenge for us to try to connect, definitely let us know, because I'm all up for that. And so until next time, stay connected.